Hey out there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours with Bob Ross. Hope everyone is doing good out there. It is hot outside. It is July currently, so the temperatures are definitely heating up. But if I haven't already said it in the past, I'll say it again. This is one of my favorite times of the year. I like the heat, not so much the humidity, but I do like when it is hot instead of cold. I cannot stand the cold temperatures. When it's warm, at least I can go outside and walk around. When it's cold, I don't want to have to keep layering up. But I know some of you out there enjoy the cold a little bit more than the heat. So, as with seasons, they begin and end. So for those cold lovers, it'll come back sooner than later, unfortunately for me. Anyways, let's get going with today's topic. When we read some of the stories from the past about practice habits, you could take a look at a Michael Brecker, a Charlie Parker, a John Coltrane. You go down the list of musicians that have at some point, if not themselves have documented this, but others have documented that their practice had been expanded out over multiple hours a day for extended periods of time. And there's a lot that you definitely can get done if you take every day practicing 3 to 5, 7, even up to the 12-hour mark that some have at least stated, or someone else has, at least put the idea out there. You can get a lot done. If it's not focused, however, you can definitely not get a lot done and walk away feeling that nothing was really accomplished. But I want you to really think about something. Let's go into maybe a different way of seeing this. From my listening and reading multiple things, resources, when it comes to an 8-hour workday, let's look at that. So when you have an 8-hour workday, and when that has been evaluated, when researchers take a look at that and they actually document the amount of work that is done within an 8-hour day on average, for a lot of the working force, and it depends on the job that you're doing, and of course it depends on the individual. But looking, as an overall, a lot of times you're finding that people are not working 8 hours. Surprising, right? No one's, no one is out there checking their phone while they're working, right? No one out there is being inefficient with time, right? Well, according to what researchers find is that is not the case. So people are not putting in those 8 hours. You could look at, if you're really pushing yourself and really using your time in a very efficient way. And when we relate it to the terms of practice, because that's a mental game. That's not, although it is a physical type of work in some sense, it is definitely not a hardcore physical job, labor type job. example like construction work, let's say. So when you take a type of work that requires mentally a lot of focus and you put a lot of attention on something, if you really try to expand on that and say to yourself, I am going to practice a very focused practice, you're going to sit down and do it for 8 hours or 4 hours. Let's cut that in half, even 4 hours. The ability to do that is very demanding, and attention is something that you develop. You can develop it like muscle. You can work on developing your ability to focus and be very specific on what you're doing. Not this multitasking stuff. I know that there's a lot of people who talk about multitasking and feel that it's an efficient use of time, and it's not. Your brain really doesn't multitask. It goes in and out between different things at a lower capacity of what it can actually do if you just focus on one particular thing. So if you're touting this idea of, well, I'm great at multitasking, well, think again. Really acknowledge this idea that to spend a focused amount of time on a specific thing is challenging. It is very challenging. So when people want to develop their abilities on their instrument and work on something, and they start to think about the things that they've heard from others practicing or what someone may have told them, that you're going to have to put hours and hours and hours in every day. If it's very focused, yes, you can get a lot of results, although you still need breaks in there because your brain has to have time to process the information. But sure, yeah, you can make a lot of progress, especially if you're a beginner. But try to sit down, even those that are good at what they do on their instruments. For a lot of people, especially in the way things are today with all the things we have access to, that is a constant pull on our attention. To have somebody that can just sit there and concentrate for a solid hour sometimes is difficult. Even 30 minutes may be a challenge. Now, there's nothing wrong with breaking down your practice time into elements, these different elements, and then, saying I'm going to have a solid block of 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there. But to think that you have to have a large amount of time every single day to progress, otherwise you're not going to do it, is just not correct. You can develop. So if you're saying to yourself, well, I need to have 2, 3, 4 hours to do this, no. It may be nice, and if you can really focus for that extended amount of time, then yeah, that's great. Otherwise, no. Sit down and really track what happens when you practice for an hour straight. And I'm not talking about more of an open type of practice or just kind of playing, your instruments. And especially, for guitar players, I'm going to be biased on that for a moment because I play guitar. It's the main focus, so why not? If I sit down with my guitar and I just started jamming along with tunes that I know, having a good time with it for an hour, and the hour is going to fly by, of course it is. Something easy like that, that may have a little bit of challenge is going to be an optimal time for me to enter into a state of flow. So I'm going to feel somewhat maybe challenged, but it's not enough to where it's going to stop me from playing. It's going to keep me on my toes, keep my mind focused. So that hour will fly by. So if you want to sit down and play with songs, things that you know, an hour may fly by and your response may be, well, that was easy. That's no problem at all. However, when you look at practice, and this may be contrary to some things that are written out there, when you look at practice, the idea of practice is not a flow state. The idea of practice is that you are breaking down things that are challenging and difficult into minute components in order to train your brain and the motor skills that you need to get all these things in alignment so you can execute these things. And as you're able to do that slowly, then you work on acquiring that skill to the point of automation. So if I now tell you, take something that is difficult for you to do, that you know you're probably going to fall on your face doing, and you have to be careful. I'm not talking about doing something to the point to where you cannot do it at all. Then you have to back off. You have to break it down into something even smaller, because you have to at least be able to do this thing, whatever it is that you're working on. You at least have to be able to do it even in the most minute, small little fragments. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get it down. If it's way beyond your level, then you can forget it. You're not going to hold on to it. That time that you spent on it will mean nothing. It was just a waste. But now if I have you sit down and work on something that is very difficult or moderately difficult, and now tell you to focus for 1 hour doing that, that's not going to be a fun time at all. And the chances for a lot of people that you're going to sit down for an hour may not happen. You may have a very difficult time doing 5 minutes of that, maybe 10 minutes. As you train your focus and you get comfortable with this idea that you're going to be uncomfortable, then you could very well get to that hour mark. But to say that it's going to take hours and hours and hours every day when this thing that is difficult to do is so uncomfortable for you that you are having a difficult time putting in 10 minutes, you can't even make an hour, then it's just not attainable. You're not going to be able to sit down for hours. So don't get caught up in the idea that this is something that you have to do in order to improve rapidly, or something that you have to do in order to be great at something that you're trying to do. A very focused approach, breaking it down into fragments that you can handle in order to automate, that will yield incredibly more results than trying to force yourself to sit down and work on something but kind of pay attention to it, kind of not pay attention, decide that you're bored with it, and then walk away. So do you need multiple hours a day in order to be great? No. It may take a while to get to what you envision, but keep strong with the process and understand that focus and none of this stuff with multitasking and whatever else, none of that, focusing in specifically on something that you know you can't do or that you're trying to be able to implement into your playing, sitting down with that for a very focused amount of time, even as for 10 to 15 minutes, taking a break and coming back. That right there is going to be your best bet. All right, guys, thanks for listening. In the show notes, you will find links to my lessons and courses at musiclessons.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Also, don't forget to leave a rating, and don't forget to leave a comment to let me know if there's any subject within music that you would like for me to discuss on a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next time on Office Hours with Bob Ross.